Today's video is a walkthrough of the model setup, so let's get started. We're going to walk through the model setup. There is quite a few options and settings and menus in the model setup, so it's going to take a little bit to get through it. However, I'm going to do some future videos where we go through each individual thing more in depth and how you will set up different menus and options. So the model setup's in the bottom center. Push the tab. We have frame rate. Hold down proceed. RF mode is automatic, or it forces DSM2. Just leave it on automatic and it'll use the protocol that matches the receiver that you're using. You've got servo mode. That's the refresh rate that it's outputting to the servos. You've got default 22 millisecond and hybrid, which is 11 and 22 millisecond. DX18 compatibility mode, and at the bottom is the output that it's sending to the servos, compatible with your servo refresh rate up here. We've got it on default 22 milliseconds, so you notice all the channels are saying 22 millisecond. Range test. This has got a step-by-step diagram on here to show you how to do a range test. Stand 30 paces away, press the I button to reduce the power, move the 6 if you see the model responsive. Down at the bottom, you will notice that it says full power. When you reduce the power with the I button, it will say reduce power. Aircraft type. This is how you set up the type of aircraft you're going to be configuring. Wing and tail type on this screen, and then you have aircraft options, which you can set up a 3-axis gyro. Something on that screen is that's not how you set up AS3X and forward programming. That has its own menu. Timers. This allows you to change the different settings and time for timer 1, 2, and then you have integrated. You'll notice that you can enable and disable the timers, and you can also change different settings. Telemetry. This shows the telemetry functions available on the receiver that's being used, especially if you click on auto config. You also have a gauge panel setup and a dashboard setup, which we'll get into those at a later time. Trainer. Trainer you can set up for wired, wireless, and then change your alerts. Audio events. This opens up a bunch of different tabs in the audio events itself, so you've got a lot more options in this model setup tab once you go into this menu that you probably didn't know you had, because when you look at the main menu, you wouldn't think there would be, almost 10 different options in here. So you got switch change reports. That's going to be so you can go in and add a switch and put an audio event for a call out, such as flaps down or gear down, throttle cut, different types of audio events for the switch that you're wanting to use. Custom reports. That's so you can set it on a switch, change the different things, and you can have it call out what you want based upon flipping a switch. Touch switch reports. This is so you can go in and touch a particular switch and it will call out the position that it's in. So you can just touch it like that and it's going to give you the call out that you have set up for that position of switch. That's also different from the switch change reports. You've got telemetry warnings. This is so you can go in and set up different warnings, such as flight pack, voltage, minimum, temperature, RPM. There's a bunch of different things you can set in here, and you can set a warning for almost any telemetry feature. Stepping reports. This is so you can put on one switch and keep flipping that switch and go down through different callouts. So instead of having them on a different switch, you could have it basically thinking of, you've got 5 switches, so you go and put them on, let's say, switch C. Every time you flip it in the position to activate it, it's going to say call out 1, call out 2, call out 3, call out 4. So it's good if you're wanting to put multiple things in a sequence. Trainer state reports. These also can be adjusted in the trainer menu. This is the callout you have for instructor, student, and no signal. Center tone. This is set up for the levers on the back and the knob at the top standard. It gives you a tone when you center those controls. Model start alerts. You can change different model start alerts based upon the position of the analog, which is the sticks, servo output, which is the channel, or a switch position. Stock, it just has throttle high, so if you have the throttle up, turn the radio on, the light here will flash and it will also say throttle high. Pre-flight checklist. This is so you can go in and set up a pre-flight checklist. That way when you turn the radio on, you have to execute those and click them completed before it will allow you to go to the dashboard. System sounds. This has transmitter battery warning and transmitter inactivity warning. Spoken flight mode. We don't have any additional flight modes set up right now, so it just says flight mode 1. You always have at least one flight mode because that's just normal flying mode. When you start adding other ones, it'll say flight mode 1, 2, and 3, and you can actually change the name if you want it to call out something differently. For example, wing sweep mode. You could do something like that, or thermal mode. There's different things you can put in for flight modes. Binding alerts. This is what it calls out when you bind to a receiver. Timer reports. You've got timer 1, timer 2. This is the last screen that's in the timer tab that we looked at earlier, so you don't actually have to go in a timer to see this. It's basically a shortcut. So it's two ways of doing the same thing. Trim setup. This allows you to change your trims from common to flight mode, or F mode abbreviated. That means if you want the trims to be the same along your flight modes, or if you want them to change based upon the switch position. We'll go more into that and you'll see how to set that up and make a little bit more sense once we do the flight mode tutorial. Channel assign. This is going to be your channel input config and RX port consignment. Channel input config is where you set the channel you want to control that particular output, and RX port assignment is the output of that channel, so you can actually change those around as well. Analog switch setup. This is your main controls on the sticks. You can change the percentages, which allows more or less range. Digital switch setup. This is so you can actually adjust the mechanical switches for when you flip them for different values or percentages. This will allow you to do different modes. We're going to be using those in a future tutorial as well to help you better understand how to change those percentages and what they do when you change them. Combo switch setup and logical switch setup are when you have two switches made to do a third function. A little bit more technical to set those up. We'll get to those at a later time. Model start warnings. This allows you to set it up to where you have warnings based upon certain variables. We've seen this in another screen talking about the throttle. It's basically a secondary screen, kind of like the trainer screen or the timer alert we've seen. You can set certain things up in multiple places. Then you have serial port setup, which is used for crossfire 1 and 2. So you can go in here and set up crossfire if you want, and then you turn the Spektrum RF module off. It can also serial port power up to 9.5 volts. You have your bind mode. That's if you're going to go into bind, just like hitting the bind button on the main dashboard. Sleep mode. Sleep mode allows you to put the radio in a sleep state, which is known as sleep mode, because what it does is uses very minimal power. However, you can hit the button at the top to wake it up, and that will load up the main dashboard or whatever menu you had it on last. Reason for this is it allows you to go between flights without having to have a delayed power on and off, and also it conserves the battery because It's still on, however, it's a minimal power consumption. Now we've completed the walkthrough of the model setup. I hope you enjoyed the video or learned something new today. If you did, go ahead and push like on the video. If you want to see future videos, subscribe to the channel while you're here. I appreciate y'all watching, and I'll see you on the next one.